Good evening, everybody, and welcome to number 10 of our series of conversations. And the series, as you know, is called Breaking the Silence, because that's the intention of this series of what I'm calling conversations. It's a little bit more of a relaxed feel, no studio. It's me and a special guest on a Zoom call, recording things without a script. So it brings me great pleasure today. I'm very excited to speak to this individual. This is Annie Barr, MBE. Note the MBE. She's a highly qualified individual. Originally started work as a nurse practitioner in the NHS, and then went on to various other things. She got her MBE for work back in 2018. She'd worked prior to that, working over in China, sort of splitting her time between China and the UK, implementing a transition from what China's healthcare was to bringing in more primary care aspects to it. She's introduced quite a few new concepts in our sort of pre-record conversation. She's involved in health training, but we'll come to how her health training is very different to what you'd get in the average nursing curriculum, medical curriculum. She works in the arena of vitamin patches, and we'll talk about that. And also developing just recently a new concept around health hubs. Finally, she's also working in the area of a vaccination antidote, let's call it, a spike protein detox agent called Zero Spike, and seeing some great results. So welcome to the podcast / conversation, Annie. It's really good to meet you.
Well, thank you, David. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, it's good to meet you. So just before we started, we sort of went through your career a little bit, and how did it all start? So you said you were a nurse practitioner. It's kind of the start of nurse practitioners coming into medicine, wasn't it? And you were sort of pioneer for that.
So many years ago, I started out as a psyche nurse, and sort of finally saw the light and left, and decided that I didn't really like it because there wasn't an awful lot of difference between who I was treating and who I was working with. So it was a sort of light bulb moment, if you like. So I then decided that I would go and do some general nursing, and I ended up in the Freeman in Newcastle doing heart transplantation. Then further went on to do kidney dialysis, and then I went into primary care in around 1997, sorry, 97. And I had secured a job as a nurse practitioner. I had been a nurse practitioner in the secondary care setting, but not in primary care. And so then it was up to me to develop the role and make it what it is. And it was a great challenge actually to do that. So with a background in primary care, then I was working or headhunted for a job in London at the Department of Health, really looking at chronic disease management and looking at integrated cancer care. And this company from the USA had won a contract, and there was 3 of us from Northumberland who were kind of recruited to come and try and sort of make a difference. So it was really more about training and professional development at that point, and looking at advanced practice and seeing what was safe for nurses to do and not, So the role of the community matron, for example, was, born out of that. A case manager role for district nurses was brought out of that. So that's how it kind of started. And then in around 2009, I started my own training and development company. And it started off doing professional development training for doctors and nurses. So not much of the social care stuff, but more of the healthcare clinical. B12 deficiency was the very first course I wrote. Many courses after that, ear care, immunizations, lots of different types of courses, clinical skills. And also over the years, I've been asked to do things like competencies for advanced practice. So I wrote the RCGP Advanced Nurse Practitioner Competencies. I recently did the Nursing Associate Competencies for, Health Education England. So that was like last year or the year before. I think it was published last year, but written the year before. So I've always been around this space of education and training, and really see that as essential for any healthcare professional, is that they get really good training. So they get competence assessment training, and that it's training that means something and it's practical, and they can apply it to what it is that they do. But also, I find myself setting standards for particularly the role of the healthcare assistant, for example. Many managers don't know where it kind of starts and stops, and then where a nurse starts and stops, and where a doctor starts and stops. And very often there's quite a bit of overlap.
Mm.
But it's got to be safe, and it's got to be within boundaries and competence. So
Mm.
that's what I
How
kind of
do you think things
specialize in.
are now? Just, I mean, I've exited primary care for different reasons now, but my impression is there's a slight, I mean, I was around when the first nurse practitioners came into primary care, and it was a brilliant adjunct to the system at the time, and we needed people and they were there to assist, but it's gone quite far the other way now. I don't know if what your opinion on that is. We've got practitioners that are physicians associates. So do you have any much involvement with physicians associates
I
or
haven't had any
PCPs?
involvement with that program, but I know there's a lot of issues with it, and I think I'm not really sure. Sometimes it really is about the background of the person, and you know you can you can have somebody who's maybe, I don't know, maybe a paramedic, for example, who goes into something like that, but they haven't really always got the background in the day-to-day routine things that are required for a role like that, like somebody with a cough or a rash, or somebody with a paramedic background is going to be great at the emergency bit and what to do cardiac wise, etc., but might not know what the rash is, might not know what so it's about the background and the training, I think. And sometimes you know anybody with a kind of healthcare professional background can come into these roles, and it's not necessarily the best thing for that profession. And in primary care, so generalist, specialist, if you like, isn't it? It's got a lot of, you have to know everything. You can't just know one thing. You've got to have a broad range of experience and understanding, and that's where sometimes these things are lacking. I think definitely with the first sort of wave, if you like, of nurse practitioners. Yeah, I think it just depends. I mean, I was always very different in terms of like, I was always, look, the reason I didn't do medicine was not because I didn't have the brains to do it. It was just because I didn't want to do it, if that makes sense. Um, and I'm now supposed to be, I'm in the middle of maybe a PhD at Stirling, looking at the vitamins and chronic disease management, and I didn't get it started, so I'm hopefully starting this September on that. But yeah, I do think you just need to have the right background to be able to do these things. I think it's not always
Yeah.
crossover is not always there.
Yeah. So we were speaking again off camera about so just to touch on an example, really, you mentioned earlier on that you're sort of involved in training around immunisations. How does your training differ from the bog standard nursing council's advice on vaccines? Do you give different advice? Do you? I'll leave you to
Um,
answer.
I think when I usually do like a vaccination course, I follow the curriculum. There is the standards for immunization, etc. And then we go into things like we use a lot of resources from Oxford University, Oxford Knowledge Project, and in that you'll find a really great resource in relation to vaccination. So it will tell you all the stuff that's in a vaccine, for example. It will give you the ingredients in a vaccine. And I do think if people are going to give vaccines, that they need to know what they're giving and what's
Mm,
in the vaccine. And they need to be able to comprehensively answer somebody who's asking questions about vaccinations. Now, I think I would say over the last 4 or 5 years, there's definitely been an increase in people really wanting to know more and to be, informed. And I think it's all about informed consent. It's all about what you do if and what what the average nurse I find in training, and I've trained hundreds of them. If you ask them the question, what's in a vaccine, and they just don't know.
mm,
And I feel it's my my job to tell them, where to find that resource. Look, they haven't got an hour for each patient. They've got 10 minutes, So therefore, give somebody the information, um, and give them, all of the advice you can give them, and tell them where to go to look for the information to make their decision. And
Yeah.
otherwise, we're just all robotic and saying the
Mm.
same thing all the time. And people want to know, and people want to know, exactly. I mean, I've got clients, for example, that I look after, and they're Catholics. So, if they thought that there was anything in a
Mm.
vaccine that they disagreed with, or was fundamentally ethically opposed to what they believe in, then
Mm.
that would, it's the same with lots of other faiths. If they knew, and you always get the same old questions about things like gelatin and, what is gelatin involved in anything? So if you don't know the answers to these things, then where are you going to find them? So I kind of go through that with them. That's probably the biggest thing that I do, is to tell people, what's in vaccines, show them where to find that information, talk through scenarios and issues. And a lot of my work is really not now. I stopped doing the travel vaccination and the childhood vaccination training. I don't do it anymore. Um, and there are reasons as to why I don't do that. I really wanted to concentrate on occupational health staff and occupational health nurses and doctors who have these conversations with people about, what's in the vaccine, and what isn't in the vaccine. So I feel very strongly that, there's a lack of that. Perhaps there's a big emphasis on, certain parts of that, but not others. And I think that people just need to know where to find information.
Mm.
For example, there's a great website where you can find out, what you can medication, really, not just vaccinations, but medication and breastfeeding, for example. There's a great
Mm.
resource for that. Where are you going to find that? And people are going to come and ask you those questions. Does this transfer through the milk? Well, and
Yeah.
so there's lots of things that I teach that are very, very different, I suppose, to
Mm.
what I used to teach,
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head
10
there.
years
We're
ago.
talking about informed consent, absolutely, and
Yes.
we're going to come to that when we talk about the COVID vaccine. But also, you've just said empowering, signposting, and
Mhm.
we realise the 10-minute limitations. We're all flat out. That's what the one thing I hated about general practice. But one of the main clients I get coming through now are parents saying, we've just watched this COVID debacle. We've lost all trust in the profession. Where's evidence-based medicine gone? And the way I twist it around is exactly what you've just said. I turn it, if you're making a claim as a clinician or a nurse that something's safe and effective, you have to back it up. The
Hmm.
duty is on you. The burden of proof is on you. And so
Yeah.
it's interesting what you provide in your training, that at least you're giving signposts to doubting parents rather than just bleating robotically safe and effective, as we
Yeah.
were taught in our medical school program. Can I just ask, do you think there are too many vaccines in the childhood schedule, or what's your view? Are you an anti-vaxxer?
Oh,
I hate
yeah.
that phrase, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, yes is the answer. Simply yes. I mean, at the end of the day, the evidence isn't there really. You look at it and you think, well, are children getting healthier? No. You know, I mean, when I was at school, which wasn't yesterday, I maybe walked away with 10 vaccines in me, and
Mm.
now it's like 84 or 90 odd,
Mm.
depending on where you are.
It's
And
overkill, isn't it? To naive immune systems, and sometimes kids at the, babes in arms are getting. I've lost track of how many they get at certain stages now, but one in each buttock, one in each arm, and your immune system's got to deal with it. And we've seen the increases in sort of progressive atopic conditions and progressive spectrum disorders and autoimmune conditions. But we'll leave that one for now, I think, just
it's
because
massive.
it's a
Yeah,
huge area, and
yeah,
we
yeah.
could get into that quite deeply. You mentioned just about you doing a thesis now in vitamins. I know that's a big part of your practice, vitamin patches. Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
So in 2018, I watched my mother die of a B12 deficiency, otherwise known as a stroke and vascular dementia. And I mean, that would take an age to go through, but the upshot of it was that I was always aware of the link between a B12 deficiency, pernicious anemia, a cognitive decline. And I watched it in her, and she died in 2018. And afterwards, I had one of those moments where I thought, how can I get, she wouldn't have an injection. I couldn't get her consent because she'd had a massive stroke, couldn't walk, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything. And I knew she hated injections. So there's no way I could do that. I just couldn't. But at the same time, I'm watching the suffering. Um, and her GP didn't even know what homocysteine level was, or MMA, or any of those, active B12. No idea. And so I thought about it long and hard, and I thought, well, what can I do about this? And I thought about a transdermal delivery system. So because of my background and contacts, etc., in various Asian countries. One of them being China, I had very good connections there, and I had, well, I got the manufacturer to do the patch, and hey, presto, 6 weeks later it was in my hand. And so it kind of started from there. And I could see, I didn't have, I'm not loaded, so I didn't have a lot of money, but I got a friend of mine who's a GP in Singapore to do a very small trial with the patches to see if they worked or not. So he would take the blood levels prior to starting the transdermal patches and 2 months after. And in most cases, the blood levels went up 2.5 times, and there was no other intervention. So kind of
Was that just B12, Annie?
that
Was
was
that
just B12 and folic acid together. And so I thought, okay, it clearly works. So I started to, look at putting them out there. So I did. And they've had great success, And people argue with me the molecule for B12 is, too big to get through the skin, blah, blah, blah. But it works, So
And are you
anyway,
seeing clinical improvements in people? Like, it's very
yeah.
non-specific, isn't it? The presentation of B12, as you mentioned,
Oh,
memory,
it's
cognitive issues.
so big. It's so
Yeah.
big.
But you're seeing
Um,
that stepwise improvement when the
yeah.
patch is applied.
Yeah, yes, I'm seeing that improvement. Now, clearly, if somebody's got a B12 deficiency, okay, I doubt whether the patches would ever, get the levels up to the level they need to be for that person. They're a great top up, but they're
Yeah.
not going to cure anything in terms of deficiency. You're going to have to look at other ways of doing that. But alongside, um, the IM version of B12, you can, top up with the patches. And because we all know that, actually most people, have gut issues, and certainly, pernicious anemia people have a gut issue. They can't absorb it. So if they're taking it in the tablets, then it's not going to work really. I don't really think they do work, to be frank.
Yeah.
And so basically, the transdermal vitamin patches were a way of trying to get vitamins into people that were, um, that they couldn't get any other way really. And so there's a range of the patches now. There's 3 different ranges, and I'm working on more.
Are you
But
doing, is it just a B12 folate, or have you got other vitamins that you're working on?
yeah, vitamin D3, K2, magnesium.
Yeah.
I've got one with zinc, vitamin C, K2, magnesium, vitamin D3. So the
And
various
seeing the
doses.
same kind of absorbance and biodistribution.
Yes, I got a lady who takes the one of the vitamin D3 patches, and her levels have gone up. Now, I say to take one a week, and she's taking 3 a week. It's up to them what they do. Um, and her levels are going up, and she's monitoring them.
Mm.
Um, and she's got a level up to, I think it's 130 with 3 patches a week. So she's stuck on that
Mm.
at the moment.
Yeah.
Um, and obviously, it's really important to me when I see somebody, because the other part of what I do is health hubs. And when I see somebody, I really want to go through what they're taking in terms of their vitamins, because I really believe that just as is a medication review's important, so is a vitamin review.
Mm.
And so I will go through the vitamins that they're taking, Very often people don't know what they're taking, and they don't know that, they're doubling up on whatever. So it's really important to do that. So kind of part of the health check that I do with people is to say, what prescribed medication are you taking, and what non-prescribed medication are you taking? What over-the-counter stuff do you take? And so people who generally come to see me are in that over-the-counter mode anyway. That's what they're doing. A lot of people I find these days don't. I don't know about you, whether you find this as well, that people don't want to take a lot of big pharma drugs. They just don't want them, and so they're more interested in alternative
Yeah.
solutions to issues.
So if we go back to, you mentioned there your health hub, what was the vision there? So that's the third big prong of what you're doing, really. You've set up independently, having been a nurse practitioner, had enough of it, I think you said,
Mm.
pre-recording, and then ventured into these three areas. How did the concept of health hubs come about? What was the vision, and how does it stand at the moment?
So the vision really was to offer people a solution, I suppose, that they weren't getting out there. I was finding that I'm the chair of the B12 Society. It's a charity for people with a B12 deficiency. And prior to COVID, we had about 20,000 members. During COVID, we suddenly got another 46,000 members. So we're now at 64 or 66,000. And a lot of that takes a lot of time because there's a group of clinicians who are involved in it, and a group of I would say expert patients who actually help people as well, a lot more than we do. We just oversee the kind of clinical bit, make sure everything's okay. And so anyway, I was seeing a lot of these types of people, and so I thought, I've got to formalize this really somehow, because I had an office at home and people were coming to the home, and then it got to the point, the usual, where it's too big, and I already had an office, for the training company, so I just divided the office that I'm in right now into a clinic and an office. So the part of it, the other half of this room is actually a clinic with a bed, etc., and lots of equipment. And because I run a training company, and most of the training I do is like clinical skills, or, a lot involves a lot of equipment. Now, I had the equipment anyway, so most of the equipment was already here, and so I formalized it. And I was getting people coming in just for B12 injections for wellness, and people coming in for a checkup. And so then I thought, well, I think possibly it's time now in 2022, 23, it was time to sort of look at how I could expand that. Um, so I applied to the powers that be to get regulated for the clinic in Scotland, and we became a fully regulated clinic in Scotland, and the rules in Scotland are very, very different to England. So it's really important to be able to sort of adhere to those things, because you couldn't even see a patient in Scotland take the blood pressure unless you were regulated. Um,
What are the differences then in between? I know there's a lot of UK doctors that are looking for a way out now. They've had enough after the COVID scan, but we'll come back to that in a second. But what are the differences? Is it CQC equivalent stuff, or?
yes, it's CQC, but it's more strict, I suppose, in them. It's really quite strict, um, stricter than CQC, in terms of what you're allowed to do. So,
Yeah.
for example, in England, I could take bloods because I'm a nurse. I can take bloods. But in England, in Scotland, I couldn't even take a blood pressure without being regulated. But if I was a hairdresser or a beautician, I could do anything. And that's the irony of the whole thing.
Yeah.
But yes, I mean, and it's the best thing I've ever done. I mean, it's freedom. It's lovely, with a great team. There's not many of us, and I would love to expand it. I think
I was
a
going to
lot
ask you about that scalability. Like what you're doing, the concept is just so easily scalable, isn't it?
it is. It's very
Mm.
scalable, and as long as you've got your policies and procedures and all that stuff in place, um, and you know what you're doing, and you know what you can't do and can do, in terms of competence and your own competency. then it's great, and it means that there's a lot of there's a lot of clinical freedom. There's a lot of you help people. You really feel. I mean, I've had a clinic on today, and I've seen 5 patients. Now, I mean, you would have seen them in an hour in general practice.
Half an hour probably in my
Yeah, and,
clinics.
and each of them I've had 2 hours.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
you feel like you made that difference as they walk out the door and you
massive.
give them
And
a
it
plan.
and it stops this look, it stops this issue of just medicating. I want to get to the root of what's going on with somebody. I'm not interested in, just pacifying somebody just to get them out the door or give them whatever. No, I want to find out what's going on, because actually that's really, really important. And so, and
Mm.
sometimes you just have to take time, um and that's a fact. And so so that's what I do. I allow people to have time. I allow myself to run over sometimes. It's the way it is, but there's only it's only me to answer to,
Yeah.
and uh,
Less your own boss and healing people in your own time and on your own
it's
terms,
just
which is
wonderful. It's
lovely.
wonderful. It's
Can we cover
freedom. It's
so in
lovely.
terms of are you free from the shackles of NMC and the regulators and all that, or I know you've got this concept I wanted to touch on about a tribal practitioner that I spotted in your email signature. Could you
Yeah,
go into that
so
a bit more?
basically, I'm still registered with the NMC, um, and I've not had any issues as such. I am also a registered tribal practitioner with First Nations. Now, that's a great, great thing to do. Um, there's an organization called Freedom Health Connect, and Freedom Health Connect is run in the States. And the founder of that, the co-founder of that, is a good friend. And so during the COVID years, there was a couple of people they were doing this. But I used to travel a lot, and so one of the things I wanted to do was to be able to travel. And so I looked at I invested in this organization called Freedom Travel Alliance. And so they were sort of organizing airplanes in various various countries to get people from A to B and stuff like that. And so it was a great concept. They never really got to the point where they got all their own planes, because it's a massive, obviously, overhead, and it's very expensive. But it was a great idea. And out of that became this Freedom Health Connect. And Freedom Health Connect is affiliated with the First Nations. And so there were lots of people who, like you said earlier, were wanting to get from A to B, couldn't get from A to B for various reasons. And so I helped them get from A to B. And it's a great concept. It's a great idea, and there are many American, doctors who are in that now. And it means that you're working under the jurisdiction of the First Nations and not under the jurisdiction of, say, the UK, or, so I used to help people all over the world
Mm.
get from, A to B, like you were describing before, people who were um, wanting to, visit dying relatives, or, go to a
Mm.
funeral, or, lived in Canada and they want to get to the States and it was virtually impossible, and Australia and New Zealand, and, so, and then, so yeah, so I kind of, I started the health clinics around about the same time as I became a tribal practitioner, but 2 years ago.
Can anyone be a tribal practitioner? So if I get
Yes,
this shop in the
yes.
summer, I just contact these guys and
Yeah, you can join. Yeah, yeah. I can send you the information to that. I can
yeah, and I'll
introduce
put
you
a
to
link
the.
on the sort of wraparound for this article as well. I just wanted to go into the COVID era a little bit with you. So I think everyone will agree who's watched this so far. You're highly decorated in terms of academia. You've got an analytical mind. You've got a sort of medical entrepreneurship. Very knowledgeable, and lots of ethical principles to what you're doing. What's your view? Sort of, what's your? I know you said you weren't working in the sort of hospitals, NHS, but what was your sort of overarching opinion of right at the beginning of COVID, and then sort of whistle stop through what you think was a bit off with the um, whole sham.
Yeah. Yes. Well, very early on, it would be sort of January 2020. I had um had a did a TV interview and for China and then it kind of the next day this pandemic hit um and I was like, oh my goodness, and I was into it, you know straight away I had connections. I was getting the PCR testing kit through emergency authorizations and all sorts in the States and had connections, so I did that and I had the only contract for, the COVID testing, which was blood tests, finger prick analysis, and it was fluorescence chromatography, and it was given in IgG and IgMs, and so I thought that was a great way forward, and I was really into it, and
So were you in China at the time, you say, and were you seeing?
no, no, I just got back. I just got
Okay.
back from China. Like I literally just got back, and then
When you left, it was okay. The next day, you flick on the
yeah,
TV,
yeah, yeah.
it's off and running.
Yeah, that's it basically. And I thought, my goodness, and so I was kind of swallowed up in it and believed. I think probably 75% of me believed what was happening. There's about 25 that was saying, "What is this? I don't really know." And then I looked and I was looking for, um, it was fascinating. I was looking at the World Health Organization. I was looking at the some of the stuff that they had done, and I thought to myself, "Gosh, within like a month, you have all these slides showing lots of things like policies and procedures that have clearly been like established a long time before. They had slides on, how to, how to run a clinic and how to run a hospital and
Are
how
you
to
saying
do the
somebody had a
emergency
premonition?
planning and
Somebody had
oh,
a
it was,
pre
yeah, it was quite interesting and had all the I mean, it was fascinating. It was all there, and I thought to myself that was quick, and that was in within like a month or so, and then when it hit here in the sort of March 2020, I was in London and it was like ghost town, and I thought, gosh, this is just it was just weird, wasn't it? And so for about I would say maybe till about the May time. Um, I was kind of believing it all. And then a friend of mine who started to work for me at that time, she actually I brought her in as an admin support, and she actually she would start to question it, and I started questioning it and questioning it. And then all of a sudden somebody gave me this book. It was written by two accountants, and it was called What Really Makes You Ill. And it's a book like this. I mean, it's fascinating. And I started to read it. It's like a huge textbook. I mean, honestly, it's not bedtime reading. But I started to look at it and I thought, my goodness, my mind was just being blown away. I was like, all the things I thought I knew, I thought I'd learned.
Do you think it was that
I
book that
thought
was your eureka moment then?
the book was it for me. The book was just it. It just really hit me. And then I started to, I had friends and I was involved in quite a lot of the COVID thing, trying to get deals done, the COVID deals and stuff. I was involved in all of that because I had connections everywhere.
Or
Anyway,
is that for all the sort of paraphernalia, like the bidding for tests?
oh yes, yeah, the
Okay.
tests and I could get them, you see. So
Mm.
people just used to try and come to me to get them, but it never worked, which was amazing. I just feel protected from it all because it never worked. None of my deals ever went through, and some of them are huge. And so I was always wondering why that didn't happen. But over the time, I realized that it was a good thing it didn't happen.
Mm.
And so the more I woke up, the more I got it, and I'd really started to wake up probably 2 or 3 years before a little bit about my brother had a vaccine injury when he was a child and he's grown up he's in a care system and and he was perfectly normal until he had his DTP vaccine and
Mm.
and then things started to go wrong and And so, yeah, I went into the vaccination world at that time, prior to that, because I was interested in it, and I was definitely into, having vaccines prior to sort of 2018. And
Mm.
then, as I say, just started to kind of ask questions and wake up. So yeah, the COVID thing, it was a strange time. I think it was all planned, to the T.
Mm.
And I think it's been borne out by the
What, in
research.
your opinion, was the sort of end game for it? Was it to get the needle in the arm, or was it something else?
I think it's bigger. Yeah,
Mm.
it's much, much bigger.
Don't want you to self-incriminate unless you
Yeah.
want to go into what you think that is. I'm gonna flick a light on. Excuse me, just gonna put the light on.
Okay.
It's dark here. Um, the Cornwall light deteriorates very quickly. So
Oh,
yes,
you're in
you don't have to.
Cornwall.
I don't want you to get into trouble, but yeah, there are other agendas at play. We're probably best to leave it at that. Really.
Yeah, I think we'll leave it there.
Yeah.
We could talk off air about that,
Did you
but
see people? Did
yeah.
you see the mortality, morbidity from COVID? I know it's a different arena that you're in. You went in the hospitals per se, but we seeing like people like in Bergamo and Wuhan, China, dropping down like fools and horses. Seeing.
Absolutely not. And so, but what you did see, obviously, the year later was the people dropping off as such, when this, there was a video, remember, of one of the nurses in the States who was, um, what's her name? Oh my
Oh, the
goodness.
woman who passed, like she passed out.
Yeah,
She was
yeah.
on the first
She
tell.
passed out and she died. And and so you knew from so yes, with the people dropping down on the ground, that never happened. Only after the
Do you
intervention
know
that
people,
was
anyone who got ill from COVID yourself in your own friends, family circle, in your healthcare circles? Anyone that got really sick, needed ventilating?
no,
No.
no.
So an intervention was created at the speed of science. Were you offered it, Annie? Were you offered a COVID vaccine slash gene therapy? And
Um,
what were your thoughts going through your head if you were?
Oh, well, I wasn't having it. Um, and I knew that very well. Definitely wasn't, because by that time I really, really had researched and looked at it, and I knew there was something off, and I knew there was there were issues. I knew it was a clinical trial. I knew that this was a stage 3 clinical trial on the human race. I knew all that, and there was no way I was being part of it. And actually joined a control group. So actually, I do have a card that says not to be vaccinated, because I'm in a control group, and and I still remain in that control group. So so yes, I didn't but I had it was a very difficult time for everybody, wasn't it? But there was people who didn't agree with me, people who I didn't talk about it much. If you asked my opinion, I'd tell you, but I wasn't going to shout it from the rooftops. I've got better things to do. But I tried to, my own father had 5 vaccines, and I tried every which way, that to persuade him not to have it, but it was his decision in the end, and he's still here, primarily because he's been treated holistically now, and not.
We'll come to that in a minute because I know
Mm.
you're working in that arena as well. So the vaccine went in, and what were you noticing again? Was there a complete difference to
Oh
what
yeah,
you've
so
seen
there are
from the
loads of
previous
side
one?
effects, loads of people who were unwell, loads of people who were in A&E, lots of neurological issues, for sure. I witnessed and saw cardiac arrest once. I saw a few people with DVTs, um, and um, and uh, and it just, yeah, I mean, it was quite clear that there was an association. But this interesting thing happened where, it was being denied. And it was like, well, and some people even like it's in your head, it's all anxiety, it's all manifested as anxiety. And that no, 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 these people are like, sane
Well,
people.
if 1 week you've got no DVTs ever in the department, and then you give a jab, and then there's 20 DVTs in a day, then there's
There's
obviously
some association.
but then you get told correlation doesn't equal causation. It's quite a beautiful, I'm going to call it a crime because I think it is one of the biggest crimes against humanity, but not to influence you. But, I think that there is that, it's very hard to prove. They say to you that the people who say that it's COVID or long COVID, that, it's got absolutely nothing to do with the vaccine. That's the one thing they're sure. The doctors are baffled, but they know it's definitely not the vaccine. Do you get that a lot? Do you hear those sort of comments
All the time, you get it all the time. And however, I think the tide is changing, and I really think that what's happened in America has played a big part in that. Certainly, people seem to be like more aware, waking up, putting two together and saying, well, I'm not going to have any more. Even older people who, traditionally would follow the traditional route of, yes, 3 bags full, so whatever you say, so, um, they're starting, some of them have started to question, what's been going on. So yes, I think there was definitely an increase in, injuries, for sure. And it, I mean, if you're doing anything, you want to know, um, if you introduce anything, and then suddenly all these things start to happen, it would be like, so I was watching, I do a lot of like, I don't do a lot of research, but I certainly look at data, and I was looking at the data with the yellow card and stuff like that, and I was seeing lots of things that were being published and seeing stuff, and I thought, my goodness, and so I had lists of all the number of symptoms. I had a cousin who got Guillain-Barre, and it was, and how many of them do you see in your career?
loads of Guillain-Barre.
I might have seen two in my whole 40-year
Yeah.
career.
Well, I've never
You know
seen
how,
any until after the vaccine, and then
yes,
queuing up even in primary care, and transverse myelitis.
transdermalitis is
Lots of
massive.
diffuse, multisystemic, multifocal neuroinflammatory things. So people would naturally go into their doctors and say, "I've got tingle here, burning there, feel a bit weak, brain fog, my toes burning," and that constellation of symptoms just doesn't really fit with anything. So that's
Mm.
where the gaslighting begins. Why do you think doctors aren't twigging it now? We've got this ostrich syndrome that they're still giving it at the end of the day. There's a moratorium being called in states in America. There's lots of legal battles. It's even reached the Daily Mail, not Fail, and the BBC this week. It's rampant now, and whether this is part of a controlled reveal or not, it's definitely hitting the mainstream in the UK. But why are the doctors still, as probably today, GP surgeries in Cornwall, GP surgeries where you are, probably still giving it out? I met somebody the other day who had 9. And then she told me that she's really pleased. She knew who I was. I knocked the door for another reason. And she said she'd had 9 jabs. And she said, oh, I know you're an anti-vaxxer. I said, well, I'm not really. It's not a vaccine and I've already had 2. So how can I be? But she said, I've had 9 and it saved my life. And then she went on to tell me the conversation that she'd developed rheumatoid, some other inflammatory condition, memory issues, nerve pain. And still she
There's
was
nothing to do with the
praising God.
vaccines, you said.
Yeah, she was still praising God that
Um,
she'd had 9 and begging to differ, as she put it. But you can't crack these patients. But how do what's going on with the doctors? What's the psyche there? What's the.
well, it has to be, quaff, doesn't it? I mean, it has to be targets. It has to be that, that's the way GPs get paid,
Mm.
and you put somebody on this, you do that, you get paid for it. So it has to be, it has to be related to cash. It has to be related to benefits. I mean, otherwise, if there was no financial incentive to give any of those, they wouldn't be given.
And it's a massive thing, Annie, isn't it? Because there's massive debts. Primary care is riddled with debts. No one, it's not what the public think that GPs drive around in their Bentleys, etc. But I was talking at a presentation yesterday in PHA in Cheltenham, and I was talking about the audience didn't understand where funding come from. And for anyone who doesn't know what QOF is, essentially GPs get paid a global sum per patient. So they get about 105 quid for every patient on the list. So if you've got 10,000 patients, do the maths, it's 100,000. That's one GP salary. So they've got to make some money. money. So they make money from things like DESIs and LESIs. So it's locally enhanced services, which are things like jabs, contraception, vaccinations, etc. And then the COVID jabs comes along at, was it 15 quid a pop at the start?
Yes.
15 quid a pop times 10,000, they've got 150% on their global sum just from vaccinating everyone on their list. And that's when the incessant jab, 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 pneumatic drilling went on, the jabatoires, as I called it. But surely now they should be snapping out of this. 2025, COVID's gone. Why are we boosting for something for
It's
the
a
lockdown?
mindset, and it's a mindset, and I think because it's so ingrained in primary care to be incentivized for doing things, and when they are incentivized, they're not going to say no because it's like you've just said, it's a part of the income and the
Mm,
whole structure, payment by results, it's just wrong and quite a lot of levels, and you get I get people 86-year-olds on statins. What's that about? What is that about? I
yeah.
get so annoyed. And I just think, why are you taking this thing? You've got myalgia, you're aching from head to foot. You take this rubbish, and sorry, but you take this stuff, and it's just, look
Well,
at
I saw somebody similar, 97, I think she was, and she was on a statin, blood
us.
pressure pill, and she was on a beta blocker, and there was no clinical indication for either. I took her off all three. I said, just give it a time with that. And the son rang me the next day and said, Mom's a different person, full of energy, her aches and pains have gone. And there was no clinical indication, but no one had thought about stopping these things. And she was 97 on a statin, on a beta blocker, and a ramipril, small dose. But so yeah, it's right. And there's hundreds and thousands of these patients that are on polypharmacy, and it's
It's
only
such a big
providing,
issue.
yeah, it's only providing profits for pharma. So while we're on the subject of pharma, you're kind of the opposite. So your experience is obviously, what percentage of people would you say come into your hubs are vaccine injured? Is that a big footfall in your service, and how are you helping them holistically?
I think yes, I think a lot of the people that come and see me come and they are vaccine injured, but they don't usually come for that reason. Interestingly enough, it's sort of a finding when you talk to them and you ask them questions and you say, have you had the vaccine, and where are you with the vaccination, the vaccination schedule. I ask them those questions because I think they're important. And then I look at their sort of, their symptoms and stuff, and it's very easily to find out, and very easy to find out. And I do homocysteine levels on everybody, and most people that come in, would have a set of bloods done, and I see the same patterns all the time. The CRP's up, the ferritin's up, and the homocysteine's high, and so I know from that straight away that something's going on, and it's a matter of time before there's some
So
sort of
are these like
cardiovascular event.
opportunistic exchanges? So you're doing something and then you have this conversation and just realize.
Yes.
This is what I
Yeah.
said yesterday at this talk
Yes.
that I was at, saying that the best way is these one-on-one conversations, because people they're coming to the self-realization now that these things are bad. They're being conned. They're not as angry as I thought they would be, but they're getting there. And
Yeah.
so we talked just briefly off camera. You're involved in Zero Spike.
Okay.
What's
So
your
zero
experience?
spike. Yes. Zero spike. So maybe about 2.5 years ago, a friend of mine sent me a link, a nutritionist that I work with, and part of my team, and she sent me a link about the augmented NAC, and so I looked at it, and I saw that the evidence for it is really high, that it detoxes, and so it's 99.8% in the trials, in the results. And I thought, well, that's that. I know that, there are certain B vitamins that, people need. And I've read some stuff around from Brian Ardis as well on, on nicotine patches, etc. So, um, but um, yeah, I work closely with Zero Spike because they're a bunch of scientists. They know what they're doing. And I'm happy to kind of affiliate myself with people like that know that they're looking for solutions, and they're scientists, and they're not they're not motivated by the big pound signs or the dollar signs or
Yeah,
whatever.
we're talking old school evidence-based medicine here, and
Yes.
what's now called conspiracy theory, but I know the team well. I don't know the product as well, but as you mentioned, it's known to detox spike protein. That's the headline. The trials prove that, and it's this thing about your conventional NAC that's bought from Holland and Barrett is useless in terms of its bioavailability and distribution, whereas this is proven again to be, you're not, peeing your money down the sink, as well, not the sink, down the toilet, let's say.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's the key. But you're seeing results with zero spike.
I'm seeing results with zero spike. When I start people on, I'll do the pre and post bloods on people. So basically, if I do like a set of bloods, like a hemolytics panel or something and a liver panel, I'll see a difference in the effects, especially inflammatory effects. So I will see that over about, well, it depends. Everybody's different, so there's not one size fits all. But definitely within the first 6 months, there's definitely a difference. And I monitor, the results. So so I'll start somebody on it. I'll just tell them to buy it. I don't have it. Well, I have one
It's a
in
shame.
stock as we speak, but that's not very often I have that. So I just get them to order it themselves. And then they take it, and basically they usually take one or two a day depending on how many vaccines they've had. You might ask them to take a couple, but anyway, what I see is that prior to the augmented NAC, the ferritin is raised. It's usually like fairly high, and it's not, it's not a hematoma or anything. It's more of an inflammatory,
Yeah.
response. And then you get the high homocysteine, and I've seen the homocysteine half in 3 months, from taking the augmented NAC,
Mm.
in just one capsule a day.
And it's
Um,
interesting because the homocysteine, as we talked off camera, it's linked with kind of memory, isn't it? And
mhm.
that sort of thing. And if that's suddenly, if high levels, are linked to, correct me if I'm wrong, links to dementia. And so seeing that drop over time is obviously, we've seen a lot of brain fog. I myself, after two, had a lot of brain fog and cognitive issues, but I think it's universal across anyone that's had more than three, that they'll privately, at the very least, agree that their brain isn't functioning or malfunctioning, should I say?
Yes. And the homocysteine is really, I mean, it controls the mood. Um, so the depression, anxiety. I mean, if it's very high, it can go psychotic. It's very often a problem when vegan women have children. So they're pregnant, they have folic acid through the pregnancy, but they don't have B12. They get to the end of the pregnancy, the nitrous oxide inactivates the B12. They get psychotic, they get admitted to a psyche unit for people with psychosis, blah, blah, blah. And all they actually usually need is a B12 injection. So, or you get, people with women who have babies who breastfeed and they're deficient in B12. Well, the baby's not going to get B12, is it? By 18 months, you've got some, so we say developmental disorders happening, developmental delays, you know, um, and it can all be contributed back to that. I mean, there's research after research on it. And I think the thing about homocysteine is that many people don't measure it, like GPs and stuff don't measure it because it is expensive. I get it, um, but it's just such a great level to know, and to understand, that it's cardiovascular effects and it's mental health, mood effects.
Mm.
And I think it's just, yeah, it's good to know it, and it's good to, because if it's really really high, it's just you need to get it down, and
Mm.
the B vitamins will get that down.
Yeah, and the studies suggest that. I mean, I've seen studies presented, robust evidence that if you know you've got high homocysteine levels and a propensity to dementia in the future or memory
Yes,
issues,
yes,
then
yes,
you address that with, as you mentioned, the B complex vitamins, and you do the same with fish oils, omega-3,
yeah,
that sort of
that's
thing,
right.
and
Yeah,
improvements happen. So,
yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, just to wind up, I just wanted to say thank you, Annie. Thank you for your time. I've been really looking forward to this conversation because
Oh.
you've had an interesting career. Um, and I just want to know how you've not been struck off. I'm joking. I'm joking because you're getting
Uh,
results and you're doing
yeah,
really, really well.
yeah. I mean, I've managed, and that's been good. I don't. It's just the first time I've ever come out. You
Oh,
know what I
bless
mean?
you. I
So,
feel like
who knows? And I spoke at the World Council for Health, a couple of weeks ago, at the conference because, I don't want to align myself with. Can I just say I don't want to align myself with wacky, way out there, mumbo jumbo stuff. It's not me, I'm not interested in here. And I don't know, I'm not saying it doesn't work. I'm just saying it's not me, Reiki and all that stuff. Just give me the science, give me the real evidence, And look, I do work with bioresonance as well, and that's really interesting. And the science behind it's great. But yeah, I think, aligning yourself with the right people in the right community, um, and it's just great, it's lovely. And I'd heard of you before, but it wasn't until the lady from Zero Spike, put us in touch. I thought, oh yes, 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 yes.
yeah.
I remember.
But a lot of what we've talked about, I'm sure you'll agree from a nursing perspective and me as a doctor, you don't get taught any of this at med school. I've become
No,
very much a results-based person and I've got reservations about, I mean, we were taught at med school that all that stuff is just, quackery. And like I say, the way I'm reversing people's vaccine injury, none of it's for medicine. It's all natural or it's dietary-based, lifestyle-based, keto diets, etc. And lots of anti-inflammatory supplements and nattokinase, N-acetylcysteine, stuff you'd never heard of. And you'll blow, if you went into your GP and said, I had a consult with Annie Barr today or with Dave Cartland and they've told me to get a nicotine patch on and take some augmented NAC and some turmeric and bromelain and nattokinase. I swear the doctor would section us both.
yeah, they would.
Which
And this is a wonderful thing. This is a CBD balm.
Oh, amazing stuff, CBD. I'm a big
Oh my God,
advocate
it's
of it.
it's 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 amazing. It's just like a apricot kernel oil, um, mandarin oil, CBD and hemp, and it takes pain away in 3 minutes. It's just amazing stuff, I don't make
The
it,
problem is that
unfortunately.
Pfizer don't get commission from it, do they? Nor Moderna
No,
or
no.
Seneca,
It's
etc.
it, it's kind of under the guise of it's called stress nut. So it's under the guise of
And it works. I mean, I use the
it
balm for my
works.
legs. I use CBD balm after I've refereed a match or played football, and the pain's completely different to what you used to get with just my old legs. So,
Yeah. It
it
is
does work.
amazing. It does work. It's amazing. And
And I wasn't
it,
taught about it, and you weren't taught about it
no,
in
no,
school, nursing in the
no.
school. And suddenly, like I say, we're coming into this world of connecting with holistic people and seeing results. And we
Seeing
have to
amazing
pass that
results.
forward. And it's been
And
amazing to
yeah,
chat. Thank
you
you for
too.
everything you've done. It's a really
No,
interesting career that
thank
you've
you.
had. It's a really interesting sort of set of visions that you've had, and you've acted upon them. And like I say, you're an inspiration to me after this
Oh,
chat. So you give me lots of ideas
oh, good.
and plots and plans for the future, as they say.
Oh, good. I like it. I'm good and stay in touch.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. And
Okay.
speak to you again, Annie. Take
Okay. Cheers. Thanks.
care. Bye.
Bye.